All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. Today is Tuesday, October 14th of 2025, and we are back after a long or little break, depending on how you interpret it. But I was gone from Friday to Monday, so haven't had office hours since Thursday. So super excited to be back here. For those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew. I'm one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS-related questions. Get your questions in one of three ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there is a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual support channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim teams. Can't say enough good things about the Discord. But with that said, we do the show Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, and then we do the show on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. So tune in any one of those days, get your questions answered. All right. Plenty of questions that came in while I was gone, so we have plenty to get to today. So excited to jump right in here and get back into it. Got SaberSim pulled up, got our questions queued up here. And first question of the day. With the difference between starter and ultimate in how many lineups it can run, does that mean ultimate runs more simulations of the slate, trying to understand if the upgrade to 5,000 lineups means seeing quote unquote better lineups overall? Okay, good question. So, it doesn't necessarily run more simulations, okay? There are a set number of simulations for each game on the slate. Last I checked, it was 25,000 sims of each game on the slate. Now, when we go and build your lineups, right, the sim diversity slider setting controls how many sims per game we use. So we might use 5 sims of each game when sim diversity is on 9. Those 5 are randomly chosen. We take 5 random sims from game 1 in this 2-game MLB multi-day slate, take 5 sims of Dodgers Milwaukee, and then we take 5 sims of Blue Jays Mariners. And then we play those out, we build the best lineup. Now, when we go to build lineup 2, we take a new random 5 sims from each game. So the process is the same, but it just happens 10 times as many times, right? So instead of doing it 500 times, we're doing it 5,000 times. So you still have access to the same number of sims, but the combinations of sims that you get is obviously bigger because we are doing it more and more times. There are exponentially high number of times that we can, or different combinations of 5 game sims of 25,000 we can take, and then plus another 5 game sims of another 25,000 we can take. This is why users don't get the same lineups that often with SaberSim, because there are so many different ways you could chop up those sims that lead to different lineups being created every time you run a build. So I hope that clarifies that, but happy to go over that if there's any more follow-up there. All right, next question. I'm in a $500 season-long DraftKings league. There's about 50 players in it, and first place every week gets 1.2 buy-ins. I created the custom contest, but how would you choose the lineups to use by ROI or projected points? Okay, good question. So I think that, anytime you use ROI, right, you got to remember that SaberSim is predicting what it thinks the field is going to play, and then you're putting your lineups up against those theoretical lineups. Now, if you're in a 50-player kind of home league style season-long contest, I don't think these SaberSim fields are very indicative of what the players in those contests are going to play. So for that reason specifically, I would probably be a little more interested in sorting by one of the lineup metrics, right? And what I mean by that is, let's say we build 500 lineups. Okay. And we're just going to let this run. All right, lineups are finishing. Okay, so I'm going to create a group. So I would be in this case more interested in going from portfolio to uniques 1 and then changing rank by. If it's 50 people, then I would probably be using percentile, and I would be using like either 95th or 85th here. Okay, so 99th is like top 1%, but you don't even have 100 people, right? So that would make me kind of want to bring this like down a notch. So I feel like 95th would be like a good percentile to use here, right? This is the scores that the lineups achieve 5% of the time, right? So if you get first place in a 50-man contest, you're in the top 2%. So if you're optimizing your lineups based on, what lineups have the highest score 5% of the time, I think that's probably a good thing to do, right? We're kind of throwing ownership out the window here because we're basically assuming that the fields don't predict what your 50-player home league is going to like do very well. So I would much rather kind of go with just like a high score approach here and then be taking the best lineups from like this 95th percentile. So this would be my advice here. But you can obviously mess around with different options, but I think that ROI is not going to be a good fit here. Okay, next question. How do we build a template for lineup groupings for multiplier/booster contests? I have one built for GPP, satellites, and cash, but my 2 multiplier boosters will not show in any of the templates. Okay, good question. This is a good opportunity to kind of show off some of these new ways that the lineup groups work. So instead of like having a different template for all these different contests, what you're going to do is just use one template with different, we call them like subgroups. So here, right, I have 2 groups because I clicked add another group. The first one, I could say that, hey, we're going to call this satellites, right? And we call this sats. And then I'm going to say create a lineup group for all of my contests that meet the requirement. Name includes, and I'm just going to put satellite, right? Okay. And then I'm going to save that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to rule 2 here, right? Okay, rule 2, say this is like the cash. Okay, and then I open it. And then maybe I do create one for all of my contests where, type is, where's type? Contest type is cash, right? Okay, contest type is cash. Okay, great. So we're going to save that. I'm going to add a new group. Now I would do my boosters, right? Okay, I do boosters / multipliers. You got to figure out the best ways to identify them. But here, right, I would say, okay, maybe I do a group for all of my contests where name includes booster. And then I say, or name includes multiplier, right? Now I'm capturing both of them in this one subgroup. Okay, great. And then I add a last one. And then I say, so basically for any contest that wasn't part of these 3, just create a group for each of them, right? And then now it's going to create one group per contest that's left. All the rules that came before get excluded, right? So because satellites are already captured, I'm not going to create a group for the satellites at that point in time once I get to this like 4th rule. So this is how I would set it up. You can do them all in one, and then you can save that, and then you can start it. So you have it going forward. You can rename it, whatever you want. But that is basically how it add the multiplier / boosters as part of this logic. Okay, next question. Hey, Andrew, what are your thoughts on having 1% exposure to a few players post-build when playing a lot of lineups? For example, playing 300 unique lineups across 2 150 max steps. Do these 1% players really move the needle, or is it best to uncheck these players and send their exposures elsewhere? Thanks. Okay, good question. Me personally, I think it's fine to have those players. You know, I've seen this like happen multiple times where you see somebody win and it's like, okay, I want to go study their lineups, you know, and then you go and look and they only had, you know, 1 or 2 stacks of like the winning kind of combination. You know, I've seen this in like baseball, like, oh, you know, a Houston 5-stack one, you go and look at somebody's 20 max set. They had 1 Houston 5-stack. And it just so happened to be that one lineup that they played that kind of got there, right? Seen this with football. You know, I think it was early on when people didn't really know what to expect of the Colts. Saw somebody win a 150 max, or they actually came in second and they had like a Colts stack. And that was like their one Colts stack that they had. And you just got there, right? So I think it's totally okay to let the builder put those lineups into your pools or your 150 sets, even if you don't have a lot of them, right? I know people are like, well, I'd rather just, you know, put more chips on, you know, the kind of like the horses that I think are going to do good. But, you know, you're trying to achieve like such a small percent likelihood outcome. You know, when you win if you're playing 1,000-man single entry, and like a lot of the football contests are bigger than that, right? I mean, like the $12 single entries have, you know, 5, 10, 20,000 entries, right? Like, but we're just using 1,000, you know. A 1% chance would be 1 out of 100. You're looking for an outcome that happens 0.1% of the time, right? In a 1,000-man single entry where you win, it's 99.9th percentile. You know, it's okay to have some players at a very low percentage because, you know, they might be optimal like at that rate, and it's okay to play them and let them get into your sets. You know, you don't need to just exclude them because they're not coming up too often. So it's kind of like the same with negative leverage. You know, if I run a build here, right, and then let's just create a group actually. Okay, I create a group. And then let's say, you know, I ran this and I'm just going to use percentile for fun. And maybe I go to my pitchers, right? And I notice here that, okay, hey, I'm getting like a lot of Yamamoto, a lot of Bieber, but I'm only getting like a little Peralta, right? Like, you know, kind of going along that line of thinking, like you would probably X Peralta here, right? Just because like you're kind of low on him already. But the builder is saying, hey, there are, you know, 3 really good lineups with Peralta in them, and you should consider playing them. And I'm okay, even with the negative leverage here, letting those lineups stick. I just think about it like I'm getting the best possible lineups with him where he actually makes sense. And for that reason, from that, you know, kind of perspective, I'm always okay and comfortable playing those lineups. All right, next question. I'm looking at doing some single entry. What logic does the sim use for single entry? Does it take highest SaberScore, ROI, or projection? Okay, so for any contest, you know, single entry, 3 max, 20, 150, anything in between, we still recommend using portfolio diversity. Okay, portfolio is the best sorting metric that we have that has back tested the strongest on our internal testing that we do. So it's not using SaberScore, it's not using projection, but it is using ROI as its source of truth, we call it, right? Where it's not just saying, okay, you know, we're going to take the highest ROI and then the second and then the third. It's not really what's happening. It's saying, hey, these are all the ROIs these lineups achieve. Figure out which combination of lineups perform the best when played together. And it's using that ROI kind of as its baseline, right? This is the number that we're always going to kind of come back to and reference, but it might not be the number that you always see prioritized, right? You might see some ROIs that are out of order, let's say, right? So I'm going to rerun this sim. And then I'm actually going to switch back to compact view because it actually makes this a lot easier. We're going to switch to 20 lineups, and then we're going to diversify. So here, right, if I bring this out, okay, interesting. Hold on, let me go to the contest tab real quick. Okay, I don't know what this is. Let's just turn on this extra innings one. Okay, we come back to the build. I'm going to rerun the sim. Okay, sim ran. Great. Let's just do this. Apply. Let's try again. No Davis. Oh, that's weird. Okay, hold on. And I'm just doing a hard refresh real quick. Okay, sim one more time. It doesn't want to do what I wanted it to do. Okay, anyways, we could probably just do something like this. Okay, and then I need to add this column. So when we sort by just ROI straight, right, for instance, these are in order. This is basically what I was trying to show. These are all in order. In order, right? 225, 164, 157, 156, so, high to low. With portfolio, it's not going to look like that, right? Portfolio, these are going to be out of order, where basically it might say, hey, they're always going to take the top ROI, so the 225 will be used. But maybe lineup 2 at 164% ROI doesn't complement lineup 1 as well as maybe what lineup with a 134% ROI does, right? It's like you might see it where it's like 225 and then 134 and then 164, right? These get out of order based on the correlative aspects of these lineups and how they perform together in the contest sim. So that is what portfolio does really, really well. And that also gets taken into account across groups, right? So like if you're playing 2 single entries, well, we're going to know what the lineup is in single entry 1 before we actually go and fill single entry 2, right? So we're going to be able to take those things into account as well. So I would stick with portfolio for single entries, but you could just know that is a very, very strong sorting metric. All right, next question. For someone who just joined, are there any recommended steps to follow to get up to speed? I've been watching SaberScore, but still have many unknowns and questions. Also, could you share a link explaining what happens if we use a SaberSim avatar and where we can download one? Yeah, sure. So the SaberSim winner circle is where you can get the avatar, and it'll tell you like what you win and how all that works. So go to this link and then go to this rules section. So you go to rules, and then it tells you what you need to do. It tells you the rules, some additional stuff. And then there are different prize tiers at each level here. Million, 100K, 10K, 1K. You can click on any of these. It'll take you to that section, and then it'll tell you what you win right here. And then in the rules area is where you can get your avatar. So SaberSim Winner Circle, super, super cool. A lot of awesome gear and swag that we don't sell. It is exclusive to our Winner Circle winners. So good way to get some exclusive stuff. All right. Second part was, are there any recommended steps to follow to get up to speed? So it sounds like you're already on the right track, going to Saber School. The Saber system is the best place to start. And then even past office hours, there's going to be office hours videos in Saber School. They're going to be on YouTube as well. You could search for specific content on our YouTube just to kind of hear sport specific strategy, right? Even if the UI is like a little bit older, which it might be, that's okay. You can still kind of listen and like get some good ideas there. So like if we go to YouTube, we go to playlists, right? We have a ton of different videos, NBA, NFL, NASCAR, MLB. We have NHL, we have golf, PGA, college football, right? You can watch all these different types just to kind of hear our team talk. All the office hours are on here as well. The good thing about the past office hours that are on here is that they're all timestamped. So like if you asked a question or if you only want to hear like a certain tidbit, you can kind of look in the descriptions, see what questions were asked. This link will take you directly to that question, and you can just kind of watch bits and pieces of them for what you might find interesting. Or maybe you see something you have a question about, right? On the YouTube, you could even search, maybe I want to know what geomean is. Okay. I search for geomean, and then like every single time we've talked about geomean or used it in a title or something, you could find all of those different spots. So I think the YouTube is another really, really good place to learn. And then you can always ask questions live. We're doing this show 6 days a week, so there's plenty of opportunity to get more questions answered. All right. I've noticed I'm getting fewer dupes when lowering the max salary in showdowns. However, are there some other tricks to get more unique lineups other than projection and exposure adjustments? I normally only see 0 or 1 unique lineups in the larger 20 and 150s in flashback. Yeah, it is like really, really hard to get fully unique in some of those bigger contests. I wouldn't sweat it too much. If you're getting single digit dupes, you're probably in like really, really good territory. Leaving salary on the table is a great way to do that. Another really good way to do that is through some type of geomean setting. It's kind of funny because like we just talked about it, and then now I'm using it. If you're not familiar with geomean, I did make a video. It's in office hours. If you go to pinned messages here, I did this a couple weeks ago, but been asked what is geomean a couple of times lately. Recorded a new video breaking it down and explaining it. I'm going to pin it in this channel. So I'm going to actually drop this link in YouTube for anybody who wants to watch that. But geometric mean is a form of ownership that is very good at estimating duplication rates in your contests. So I would highly recommend checking that out. I think it's like a really good way to get more unique. So that would be my next stop after salary adjustments. All right. Can you explain what is the best sorting method, portfolio, contest, ROI, or SaberScore? Cool. I think we caught this one. And I see a few people mention we should add a filter to reduce our 5,000 player pool. Can you show an example? Thank you. Yeah. So we did talk about the best sorting metrics. So I'm going to skip that part. But for cutting your lineups, right? If you want to do this, you don't have to do this. Geomean would be a way of doing this, right? So like I'll explain how to do that. What you would do, right, is you would create a metric. You can do custom metrics if you're on Ultimate, or you can just use the regular in-house metrics, right? So like I've created a custom geomean one because that's like not a default one, but maybe I want to cut some projected score. Okay. So what I do is I go to this lineup pool filters, and then I'm going to make a filter. I've named it projection. I'm going to say show lineups with projection greater than X. And what I'm doing here is I'm getting rid of some lower projected lineups. Now, this just happened to trash a ton of my lineups. So like this would be like way too high of a number. So like I would want to bring this number, way down, right? And maybe I bring it down to 80, and that's still like cutting a lot. Maybe I bring this number down further to like 70. And, I would have to basically just kind of like go down and down and down until I got to a level where it didn't cut so many lineups out of my pool, but this is how you effectively cut lineups out of your pool. Is you use the lineup pool filters, you set up some filter here, ownership, whatever you have it, and you apply it, and then you can see how many lineups go in the trash in this bottom group. All right. All right. So should you create templates for each type of contest, i.e. single entry has its own template, 20 max has its own, and MME have its own? Good question. It's going to depend if you want them all to have kind of separate like logic. Like if you want to group all your single entries, I would make that part of this, right? So I could probably, but before this last one, I would switch these two. And then I would, name this single entry. And then I would say something like group all of my contests where max entries equals 1, right? So then now I've added single entry. So if you want it to have different behavior, right? If you're fine with your 20 maxes and 150 maxes having their own group, then this will cover it. So it just depends what you want it to look like. But yeah, I could add single entry there. All right. I just started SaberSim last week. How do I bring up the optimal is the first lineup if I hit build with no adjustments. So to find like the mathematically projected optimal, what you want to do is go to the settings, switch build mode to optimizer, and then click this run optimizer mode button. When you get into the post build, I would also make sure to use diversity uniques 1 and then change rank by to projected score. That will show you the mathematically optimal lineup. All right, next question. If I want to target certain stack types, should I uncheck the unwanted ones before or after building the lineups? Thanks. Yeah, I would do it before, right? You basically don't want to waste lineups. Let's say, you're playing baseball and, you never want to play less than a 5 stack, right? You don't even want 4 4s or 4 3s. You're wasting here, right? Our pool exposure is 13% 4 4s. You're never going to consider them. So you might as well get 68 other lineups that you actually would consider playing, right? So overall point is don't waste lineups in your pool. All right, next question. Hi, Andrew. Is there a way to combine 2 builds for an NFL main slate where build 1 is a sim dominated and build 2 I tinker with the exposure significantly? What you can do is you can send lineups to the favorites. So like maybe I need 20 lineups, right? Okay, well, in build 1, what I can do is if I hold shift on my keyboard, right, and I click the bookmark, which sends a lineup to the favorites. Hold on. Actually, let me open this up. Uniques 1. Let's just go projected score. Hold on, let's clear this. Okay, so if I shift bookmark and then I go down and then I click again, it's going to send all of the lineups in between to the favorites. So here I've sent 10 lineups. So what I could do is I could take 10 lineups from this one, 10 lineups from my one where I tinker, and then now I can go to my favorites. I'll have 20 lineups now, and then I can submit them from there. I actually think I have a video on how to do that as well in office hours. So favoriting a single lineup and bulk favoriting a set of lineups. Another one here that I will drop. All right. Next, Daryl said, I love the winner circle 3 consecutive months where I don't have to pay, hoping to get the 4th soon. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. All right. Think we are all caught up here. So appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern for our next show. So until then, everybody, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.